My next patron question is from Joshua, who wants to know if I think Hollywood was right to make films about a specific national tragedy. In many cases, movies that portray major occurrences in history tend to be made and released many years, sometimes decades after the actual event. An exception to this, however, is 9/11. Several films about that catastrophe came out within the next few years following the real event. I'm wondering, 1. Do you think Hollywood started making 9/11 movies too early? And 2. What are your thoughts on any 9/11 films, if any, that you have seen? I remember shortly after the September 11th attacks occurred, people wondered if this was something Hollywood would seek to capitalize on. And a few years later, films about that day did start cropping up, although the first noteworthy movie was actually released the following year, Spike Lee's 25th Hour. It was not originally about the event, but as a devout New Yorker, Lee felt he could not ignore what happened that day. What spurred the discussion of whether it was too soon to make films about September 11th were two movies released in 2006, Paul Greengrass's United 93 and Oliver Stone's World Trade Center. There were conversations whether the time was right for Hollywood to depict those occurrences on the big screen. I have not seen Stone's film, but I did watch United 93, and I think Greengrass handled the subject tastefully. In addition to filming the hijacking of United Airlines Flight 93 in a documentary style, he cast primarily unknown actors in the roles. The actors also consulted with the families to make sure their portrayals were respectful. As such, United 93 succeeds at being as authentic as it possibly could and does not come across as tasteless. More so than films about the event, there have also been films made that depict the reactions to what happened. You have biopics like W and Vice, which depict how the people within the Bush administration reacted to the attacks. An interesting case is also the drama Reign Over Me. In that film, Adam Sandler plays someone traumatized by what happened to his family on September 11th, and how it affected him. While it's a flawed movie, I did think it managed to show the mental state someone could be left in when something tragic happens to those they love. There's also the television series Homeland. I recently watched the first season, which focuses on a CIA agent who is so affected by what happened on September 11th, she becomes determined to make sure something like that does not happen again. The opening titles even contextualize the events of 9/11 as a pivotal moment in Carrie's life. In addition to films about September 11th, you also have movies that act as metaphors. Steven Spielberg made two such films in 2005. First, there was War of the Worlds, which I think is the best screen depiction of post-9/11 paranoia. It's a film that really captures the fear and uncertainty many felt after that day, and some of the imagery and dialogue evokes September 11th and the conversations afterwards. In Munich, Spielberg depicts the Israeli reaction to the 1972 Munich Olympics massacre. In the film, he attempts to explore the act of revenge and whether violence is the best response to a horrible and tragic attack. Remember, this film was made during the first few years of the War on Terror, which remains a controversial response to the attacks. Spielberg was criticized in some quarters for daring to ask if there's another way to respond to such events, but I think Munich becomes one of the most thoughtful discussions on this topic. Unless you think I'm reaching, the film even ends with a shot of the World Trade Center. Will Hollywood one day mount a big-budget, star-driven movie akin to Pearl Harbor or Midway about September 11th? I'm not sure. The attacks happened so long ago, it's now an historical event. There are, after all, now teenagers who were not even born yet when it happened. But even with that distance, there are still many who lost something or someone that day. So it would need to be done with absolute tastefulness. And that's very tricky to do, as you don't want to come across as sensational. At this point, I still believe the United 93 approach is the best route. Let me know what you think in the comments, and thank you for your question, Joshua.